Last time on Pasta Man 64.
Ah! Oh, you're here. Splendid. Sorry for not being in a good mood today, but if a transforming F-22 crushed you with your own ship, then you wouldn't be in a good mood either. All this just because I happened to mention Transformers Dark of the Moon. So you know what? Let's watch it. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that movie just to spite that rotary engine, rotor-shaped chicken walker. F-22 Raptor, more like fish into a crap tour. Got him. So, Transformers 3. They actually made that, despite Transformers 2's less than ideal Transformers 2. But then, as most people are probably aware by now, quality and success are not synonymous in the movie industry. And since Transformers 2 was an even bigger success than the first film, it was no surprise when we got a sequel to the sequel. But speaking of that first movie, it wasn't actually that bad. By no means perfect, but it was still a good movie. And Transformers 2 had a lot of good ideas, it was just compromised by outside circumstances. But with this third one, there's no writer's strike to derail it. They learned from the mistakes of the previous two films, and they mastered the technology driving these films. So you know what? This one might actually be good. In fact, it might even be the most good. Or it might be the cash grab entry they have hastily made to earn a paycheck. I guess the only way to find out is to actually watch it. So as the movie begins, we are shown one of the final battles on the planet Cybertron. This one Autobot ship is trying to escape the planet, but ultimately gets shot down and drifts off into space. So I guess it technically did escape. Now let me immediately go off track here, because I've got a pet peeve to settle. See, we actually got a brief glimpse of Cybertron all the way back in 2007. But there, it looked like this, whereas in this movie, it looks like this. And I see a lot of people call this an inconsistency, but like, can't that be attributed to Cybertron having different biomes? Like a certain other planet called Earth? You know, the one humanity wants to leave because they're sick of all the mosquitoes on it. Cybertron is a pretty big planet, so it makes more sense to me that its surface would be varied rather than a single, visually uniform thing. And thus, these two scenes are just set in different areas. Instant tangent aside, the aforementioned Autobot ship crash lands on Earth's moon, which is detected by humans, in the 1960s. Turns out, the whole space race was not just a rule to escape the mosquitoes first, it was secretly a race to the mysterious Cybertronian wreckage. Cut to some girl's legs. This is Carly. She is Sam's new girlfriend, because apparently he broke up with Michaela off screen. Okay, so what happened here is Michaela's actor, Megan Fox, got fired. The reason you always hear for this is that she compared director Michael Bay to Hitler in an interview, but I find it hard to believe they'd fire one of the main characters over a single interview. So I did some digging and it seems that Megan Fox was just generally disliked on set. So maybe that one interview wasn't so much the main reason as it was just the final straw. Or all of this is completely made up and there's a completely different reason she got fired and crew members just playing along with a fake story for PR reasons. Either way, what confuses me is, why didn't they just recast Michaela? Like, you're telling me that by 2011 we could have 7 James Bonds but not 2 Michaela Baines? Yes, the change in appearance would be jarring, but by instead replacing the character with this Carly person, you now sever the romantic plotline that's been central to the main character for the past 2 films. You know, the one I haven't mentioned yet, cause... do I look like I know anything about romance? But speaking of Sam, he's been going to a bunch of job interviews lately, though he's struggling to actually get any of the jobs. While that is happening, we learn that after the Decepticons got defeated in the last movie, the Autobots have been helping out humans with their miscellaneous affairs.
You know we don't harm humans. What is with you?
One of these miscellaneous affairs is investigating a potentially alien object found in Chernobyl. They notice that said object seems to have ties to the Soviet space program, before it gets stolen by a new Decepticon named Shockwave. Shockwave has a giant worm robot he uses to demolish buildings. I'll never talk about him ever again because that single sentence literally describes his entire role in this movie. Optimus steals back the alien thingamajig and brings it back to base. There, it is revealed to have been an engine part from the ship we saw at the beginning, which the Soviets must have somehow picked up using unmanned moon probes. This information is told to us in part by Buzz Aldrin. As in, the actual Buzz Aldrin, they got a real astronaut to appear in this film. So it turns out that the ship's captain was Optimus' predecessor, Sentinel Prime, who is most likely still on board. And so they head to the moon and find Sentinel in the crash vault. Turns out, he locked himself inside to guard these so-called pillars. More on those later. I gotta say, we're roughly half an hour into this movie, and so far it's actually pretty calm. Almost a little too calm, like none of the characters are even in any real danger yet. They're just kinda meandering around investigating stuff, in case there might be danger lurking somewhere. The movie still has a bunch of explosions, random jokes and sexual movements just like the last one, but they're a lot more spaced out. Your brain actually gets time to process all the things happening on screen this time, which is nice. Had this been as hyperactive as the last movie, I wouldn't gotten a stroke. But unwanted blood flow through my brain aside, we cut to Megatron, who's acquired the ability to delete grass by transforming. No, like, actually look at this. He drives up and there's grass everywhere. Then we cut to a shot of him transforming, and there's barely any grass at all. And after scaring away some zebras, the grass is gone. Soundwave here reports that the Autobots have taken the bait, discovering the crashed ship and bringing its cargo back to Earth. And so Lawnmowertron declares that it's time to eliminate loose ends. While Soundwave's pet bird kills a guy, Sam is at work. Yeah, he actually found a job, mainly through the help of a recommendation, even though he doesn't actually know anyone working at this company. Seems that recommendation came from this guy, who knows about Sam's ties with alien robots and therefore forces him into the restrooms.
Because shit's going down, son. It is code pink, as in Floyd. Dark side.
Oh hey, the movie itself made a Pink Floyd joke. You know, referencing how its title is similar to The Dark Side of the Moon, the iconic Pink Floyd album famous for how it inspired the cover for the greatest album of all time, Linear Pair of Angles by Justin RPG.
I hate this Windows Vista tonight. Blue screens.
The Pink Floyd fan warns Sam that his robot friends are in danger before giving him some papers mentioning something about the dark side of the moon and a bunch of space experts ceasing to live. And as punishment for giving out those papers, the pet bird from earlier promptly defenestrates the Pink Floyd fan. Why does English have a word for throwing people out a window but not separate word for your parents' parents? In response to all this, Sam heads off to the Autobot base just as they're about to revive Sentinel Prime. After waking up a little grumpily, Sentinel reveals that the pillars are a technology that can reshape the universe to create a space bridge, allowing the transport of matter through space and time. Meanwhile, despite mentioning that he saw a Decepticon in the workplace, Sam's warning about them being back falls on deaf ears. And so he goes out to find a connection between the Autobots, Decepticons and the moon stuff on his own. And on the way, of course, enlists the help of none other but Monk's brother.
When the Decepticon
comes back, he'll want to see his mail.
You can't hide, boy!
Together they go do some stuff to figure out some things and finally learn that there are actually more of Sentinel pillars hidden away on the dark side of the moon. And so armed with this knowledge, they head back to the Nest base to warn everyone that they're falling into a trap and that the Decepticons want to get their hands on Sentinel. But once they arrive, it's revealed that Sentinel was actually working with the Decepticons, as he proves by not only blowing up the base, but also straight up depriving Ironhide of existence. And in a pretty gruesome manner too, dude just gets to watch his own body rust apart to nothing. Now before we move on, I would like to mention the mystery this movie has been building so far. And if you got deja vu from me saying that, that's because the 2007 movie also dedicated its first half to slowly unraveling a mystery, which is something I praised that movie for. In fact, I still think it's the best part of the whole movie. And yet, the mystery in Dark of the Moon kinda sucks, if I'm being honest. So what gives? What exactly made the first one's mystery work so well in a way that the third one is lacking? I think the issue is that in Dark of the Moon, there's no reason to care. Let's look back at the 2007 film. As we grow closer to answering the mystery, the main characters get into greater and greater danger. At first, Sam only has to deal with his car acting weird. Then a big scary robot yells at him. Then he finds himself in the middle of a giant robot deathmatch before we finally get the answer to the mystery. Even if you don't care one bit about the mystery in the 2007 movie, you probably do care about Sam since he's a likable character that we spend a lot of time with. And so if the mystery is increasingly putting him in danger, then you're gonna become invested in that mystery. It also makes us anticipate the big reveal, because if all this is just teasing what's to come, well, you wanna see what the hell could be next, don't you? But this principle isn't really utilized in Dark of the Moon. Yes, Sam and the gang do get in dangerous situations, but those situations are rarely related to the bigger mystery. Like in this scene, where they try to ask some Russian cosmonauts and stuff and it leads to a Mexican standoff. or I guess Russian standoff in this case. The Russians didn't pull out their guns because they were trying to keep the mystery secret. I don't know, they got suspicious or something. The movie doesn't really explain it. And yes, the Decepticons, who are of course involved with the mystery, do kill 3 people. But they're just random background characters. In fact, only one of them even receives an actual name in the movie. What all this means is that the mystery isn't exciting on its own, nor are you invested in it by the characters. And so the mystery just becomes boring. Which is a problem, seeing as that mystery is the main driving force of the movie's entire plot. Also, despite not being based on eBay this time, the answer to the mystery makes almost zero sense. See, it turns out that during the end of the Cybertron War, the planet was basically dead. And so Sentinel Prime and Megatron made a deal. They would use Sentinel pillars to teleport Cybertron to Earth and force humanity to rebuild the planet for them using Earth's resources. But then Sentinel's ship got shut down and crashed on the moon. And so Megatron had to wait for Optimus to use his matrix of leadership to revive Sentinel, to then continue to plan. And somewhere along the way the moon became host to like a million Decepticons, I guess. Now first of all, why didn't he tell his own men to just not shoot down the guy he was working with? I can actually buy the plan to use Optimus' Matrix, because in the second film the plan was for the Decepticons to find it first, and so when the Autobots got in instead, the plan was probably just altered accordingly. But what I can't buy is that apparently there's been a giant Decepticon army on the moon all along? Do you remember why the Decepticons came to Earth in the first place? It was because they needed to Allspark to, and I quote, transform Earth's machines to build a new army. Emphasis on new, implying that something happened in the previous one, that means they now need more men. Well, if you need more men, why didn't you just use the ones right there? And yes, I know they were stuck on the moon. But you're telling me that one of these ships wouldn't have been able to make the journey on its own? When humanity could travel to the moon with 1960s era technology, including a computer with only 1 kilobyte of memory? And then it's not even mentioning the fact that we've seen Decepticons travel through space without even needing a spacecraft to travel in. Oh, and before I forget, they work with people at NASA so no one would know that the moon is riddled with evil robots. And those are the people they were killing before. I say, is that tidbits gonna change the fact that none of this makes any sense? But I know what you're thinking. Why am I bringing all this up right now? Don't I usually say these kind of thoughts when I watch the whole movie? Well, it's because after the big reveal happens, the movie actually starts to get really good. The movie manages to instill a really strong feeling of hopelessness and defeat, like, for a moment the bad guys basically win. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So despite Optimus' efforts, Sentinel is able to activate the pillars, bringing the moon army to Earth. And later, he declares the Autobots must be exiled, else the Decepticons will genocide all the humans or something. And the Autobots comply. I guess they too want to escape the mosquitoes. They get into their alien NASA hybrid ship, set off into space, then Starscream is also in space, and... Oh dear. The Autobots, they're all dead. And then the Decepticons, they seal off the city of Chicago and proceed to destroy everything. It's basically the apocalypse. In movies like this, it's very much a given that the heroes win at the end of the day. And yes, they do win in this movie too, we'll get to that. But in this moment, the movie gives you such good reason to doubt that things will turn out good in the end. For how can the day be saved when everything lies in ruins? How could you possibly save this situation? I remember the first time I watched this film, I genuinely wasn't sure if the heroes would pull through. Granted, I was 10 at the time and somehow even dumber than I am now, but still. Sam, alongside some soldiers, decides to sneak into Chicago to look for Carly, who's being kept there by a guy I'm far too lazy to talk about. However, on the way they get caught by this Decepticon fighter aircraft and are about to die. But then it gets shot down! By Optimus Prime! Turns out, the Autobots hid inside one of the separation stages of their spaceship and splash down in the Atlantic, tricking the Decepticons into thinking they had left. They steal the fighter they shot down, use it to rescue Carly, and then probably crash it somewhere before the guy was too lazy to explain, warns the Decepticons that the Autobots are back. But speaking of that fighter they has crashed, something I appreciate is how these things look similar to the Transformers they belong to, without actually having the same aesthetic. Like, the ships are detailed and do take cues from a sort of jagged panel look the Transformers themselves have, but they tend to look a lot more solid, which I like. These aren't Transformers, they're machines built by Transformers. And so it makes sense that they wouldn't completely resemble their makers, much like how human technology doesn't completely resemble humans. But on the topic of aesthetics, this movie looks good. The CGI is, well, it's just as flawless as it was in the previous movie. And aside from being slightly less colorful to match this movie's tone, the cinematography is basically the same as it was in the previous two films. So let's instead discuss something I've intentionally neglected until now: the character designs. A lot of people throughout the years have complained that they don't look like their original incarnation from the 80s and stuff. Like, this is what Starscream looked like in the 1980s versus the Michael Bay films. Here's Sideswipe, here's Jetfire, etc. And while that's objectively true, I personally don't mind. In fact, in some cases I actually prefer the movie version. One of the most important parts of character design is the ability to understand a character just based on how they look. I don't need to tell you what this guy is like, or what this guy is like, or even what this gal is like, because the design of those characters immediately tells you without a single word. And the movie designs are often superior in this category. For example, here's the first design for the character Ironhide. If we're being completely honest, what can you actually tell me about this guy just by looking at him? Basically nothing. Now here's the movie version of that same character. Immediately we can see he likes weapons, we can tell he's probably strong yet slow judging by the body shape, and a dent in his face tells us he's been in a lot of fights. And you can make similar comparisons with a lot of the designs in these movies. Now that's not to say that all designs are strictly better, or that the movie verse doesn't have its own duds. Not to mention some of these guys' faces are But to completely disregard movie designs just because they're not accurate to the originals is, in my opinion, dumb. Especially when you consider that Transformers has never been consistent anyways. Transformers is a toy line. That means most of its fans are children. And because children do this funny thing called growing up, toy lines have to constantly reinvent themselves to remain popular. And Transformers is no different. This, combined with copyright shenanigans, means you often get characters to share names despite being unrelated. But to me, all this is the beauty of something like Transformers. Don't like this version of Starscream? Well, maybe you like this one, or maybe this one. And if all else fails, they'll probably bring back this one sooner or later. The fact that it's constantly reinventing itself is what allows a franchise like Transformers to experiment, try new things, reinvent old ideas and so on. What would even be the point of keeping this franchise around if it just does the same thing over and over again? But getting back to the topic of the movie's character designs, another criticism I often see is that they're too detailed, which I half agree with. On one hand, these characters are engineered to look great on the big screen. Saying that the characters look bad because they're hard to comprehend on, say, a phone screen is a bit like saying a musical is bad if you turn off the sound. But on the other hand, these characters are almost too detailed even for their design purpose. You know what motion blur is, right? It's when you move something and it gets all blurry. And you need to capture that if you want your movie's special effects to look even the slightest bit real. The reason I'm mentioning this is because these robots are so detailed that they literally had to have less motion blur than the footage they're part of, else it would just turn into a blurry mess. Which does result in some shots having a almost hyper smooth stop motion look to them. Now if your live action character designs are so complex that you have to cheat the laws of light just to make them visible in motion, then maybe it's time to reduce some of that detail. But I've gone on long enough about character design, so let's get back to the actual movie. After some construction-related antics ensue, Sam and Carly get separated from the soldiers. While trying to run to safety, they encounter Starscream. However, using some gadgets got from an Autobot earlier, Sam is able to pull out one of Starscream's eyes. Did you know this movie was shot in 3D? Yeah, some shots in the movie get a really spiky 3D vibe to them. Anyway, Sam plants a bomb in his other eye before this happens. I guess that explains why he didn't want me to watch this film. Getting back to Sentinel, he activates the pillars and thus brings Cybertron to Earth. And then some action scenes happen. They're good action scenes, but I have literally nothing interesting to say about them, so let's just skip ahead. Optimus decides to engage Sentinel, which goes not great. But then Megatron, after a pep talk from Carly, joins the fight and beats up Sentinel. While that's going on, Sam and the guy manage to take down the control pillar, which causes Cybertron and all the Decepticon ships to get teleported away. With the battle basically over, Megatron suggests a truce, to which Optimus responds by tearing his head off and revoking Sentinel's existence permit in cold blood. More on this later. After Bumblebee suggests using his internal organs as a wedding ring for Sam and Carly, we finally roll credits. And that's Transformers: Dark of the Moon. So was this a good movie, or just a lazy cash grab? It was neither. Borde nog göra något åt röken snart. This movie is kind of the reverse of the 07 movie. That movie had a really well thought out first half, while the rest of the movie felt like a bit of an afterthought. Whereas Dark of the Moon has an excellent second half, but the only two of that half is a boring slog. However, I don't think this discrepancy is the result of incompetence, but rather a shift in priorities. Think about it. Why was Transformers 2 such a big success? Part of it was brand recognition, yeah, but also because despite the movie's poor writing, the action and special effects were brilliant. People came to the cinemas just to see the action scenes on the big screen, and so I imagine the filmmakers Dr. Moon thought, well, if people just watch these movies for the action, then we're gonna make the best action movie they'll ever see. And it kinda succeeded. The fight choreography, the music, the effects are all great. It's creative too. I mean, how many other action movies, even today, have wingsuits, building being collapsed as people are gliding on them, an entire planet being teleported into orbit, the actual real-life Buzz Aldrin, and more? The movie also has a great sense of finality. The stakes and scale is bigger than ever before. Many of the characters we've seen across these movies meet their end, and so on. Trouble is, the movie kinda sacrifices writing in pursuit of all that spectacle. Half the movie is based on uninteresting mystery, most of the characters are just as comic relief for the partake in fights, and the story is filled with plot holes, especially when you consider the past two films. The perhaps biggest example of this sacrifice is Optimus Prime. In most iterations, Optimus is depicted as a pacifist forced to fight the war.
Autobots do not inflict harm unless all other options have been exhausted. It is what separates us from the Decepticons.
For the most part, this characterization was initially kept in the Michael Bay movies. He fights a lot in the 07 film, yeah, but he's quick and efficient in his fighting style. He is unwilling to start a fight to save Bumblebee, and in the final battle, he would have rather sacrificed himself than prolonged the violence. But in Dark of the Moon, he's constantly announcing his intentions to undo lives. He's pulling out eyeballs, he's executing unarmed men, and violently decapitates someone asking for a truce. It's a complete opposite of how it's usually depicted. But Pasta, I hear you say, even though that's not my real name. Didn't you say it was alright for Transformers to be different in different media? So why is it suddenly bad that Optimus is different from its other incarnations? Are you a hypocrite? Well, yeah, obviously. But my issue here isn't that it's different, it's that it's less. What makes Optimus Prime an interesting character is that he's the strongest Autobot of them all, yet he doesn't actually want to fight. He's strong enough to be gentle. But in Dark of the Moon, and to a lesser extent Revenge of the Fallen, he's just strong. In other media, when Optimus lets Megatron live, is he righteous for not resorting to the same violence as his enemy? Or is he making a mistake by letting a killer go free? That's a question you could spend days, months, years, perhaps even an entire lifetime thinking about. And that's the power of complex characters, they make you think about the world and our place in it. When movie Optimus tears someone's head off, it looks cool, and that's it. There's nothing to think about anymore because the writing would have made you think has been stripped away in favor of the cool factor. And that exact issue runs through the entire movie. The Battle of Chicago is a visual masterpiece, it looks awesome and epic. But because the movie doesn't care about the story leading up to it, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything. It's action for action's sake, it has all the substance of a tech demo or a trailer. There's no reason to genuinely care about any of what's going on here besides just appreciating the work that went into the spectacle. And even then, only half the movie even is that spectacle. The other half is just sitting around and waiting for the good part. Would I call Transformers Dr. Moon a bad movie? Yes. Yes, I would. But it's a really well-made bad movie. I personally don't like it, but if someone else does, then I can totally see why. The reason I'm even talking about this movie for so long is because you can tell it was made by people who genuinely wanted to make something awesome. But while their heart was in the right place, their priorities were not. But now that I watched this movie out of pure spite, I'm done with the Michael Bay Transformers trilogy. And yes, I know the man made 2 more Transformers movies, but I don't want to watch them. What the? Oh. I should probably fix that before it ignites the smoke, shouldn't I?
It's such a girly choice, but I do like Bumblebee. He's the smallest one. I want to be able to beat his ass.